Hi guys, I'm Brett Wood from Brett Wood Photo Art, and today I'm going to take you through a little instructional video on how to set up and use Nisi filters. The Nisi filter system we're using today is the V5 filter kit and the 100mm ND and graduated filters. So let's get down to it and we'll give you a simple instructional video on how the system works. The gear we've got here today is the Nisi V5 100mm holder system. The kit, when you buy the kit from new, it comes with 4 different adapter rings, 67mm, 72mm, 77mm and 82mm. Essentially, you just need to select the right adapter ring that suits your camera lens. If you look at your camera lens head on, it will generally have written on the camera lens the size, the filter size. This is a 16 to 35mm Canon lens, and written on the end of the lens it says 77mm. So we use the 77mm adapter ring. Quite simply, we screw that onto the end of the camera lens. It's a clockwise thread like anything else. Quite simply, it goes on nice and snug. The next thing we then select is this piece of equipment here. This is the 82mm adapter ring, and this also holds the Nisi circular polarizer. This is a really great idea from Nisi because the circular polarizer goes into this adapter ring and we can actually adjust the polarizer while it's on the camera with these little wheels on the side of the adapter ring. So we're going to put the polarizer in this today as well. So we've got the polarizer here. This is the Nisi polarizer. The easiest way to put the polarizer into the adapter ring is to hold the adapter ring in your hand, in the palm of your hand facing down. That way the polarizer can't fall out when you're screwing it in. So you just put the polarizer down into the 82 adapter. Hold one of your thumbs on one of these little wheels on the side just to stop it spinning, and quite simply, about 3/4 of a full turn, the polarizer will turn in to where it's tight. You can then, once that's attached to the camera, you can spin the little wheels to turn the polarizer around. And essentially the polarizer is designed to take sun glare off the water, or on a very bright sunny day when you have blown out highlights and white sections in your photo. The design of the polarizer is to take the glare away. So we're going to use that today. We then pick that up face on and screw that onto the 77mm adapter ring, which is already on our camera lens. Okay, we spin that on. Once we've got that on, the next piece of equipment we use is the actual filter holder itself. This is the V5 filter holder. It has 2 little slides, one on each side, and it's capable of holding 3 filters. Those 3 filters could be 2 graduated filters and 1 ND filter. You could just use 1 filter, you could use 2 filters. For the most cases, I use 2 filters. I use a graduated filter, which is generally a 3 or 4 stop graduated filter, and I also use an ND filter. And today the ND filter we're going to use is a 10 stop filter. So basically what that is going to do is the graduated filter is going to bring down the exposure of the sky and closer match it to the exposure of the foreground. And the 10 stop filter is going to really slow our shutter speed down and give us that nice, smooth, calm, dreamy look to our water. And if we've got clouds that are moving, we'll also get some nice wispy movement in our clouds as well. So with the V5, the easiest way to put this on your camera, it has a small pin on the bottom which pops up and down. It's best to have that pin, hold this pin in your hand facing the ground. On the top of the V5 holder, there's 2 small locator lugs. Basically, you want to pull down from the top towards the ground. You want to get those 2 locator lugs to grab on the filter holder. Once you feel them grab, you simply pull the pin at the bottom and it should just clip on like that. Always give it a shake and a rattle and a spin and just make sure it's definitely clipped onto the 82mm holder. In this case, it certainly is. Today's location is this nice little jetty in New Zealand, so we're just going to take an image here. We'll spin the camera around, we'll put our graduated filter in, we'll take a test shot with the graduated filter to determine our perfect exposure so that we can then get the exposure spot on when we put in the 10-stop ND filter. I always shoot off the live view screen on the back of my camera. I find this a lot easier than looking through the viewfinder or the eyepiece. So I switch my camera on, I press this button which brings up my live view, and immediately I've got a live view of what's happening in the scene. I compose my photo and I've already had a bit of a look and got an idea of a composition for this image. So that's pretty good. I'm reasonably happy with what I've got there. I always use manual focus as well. That's a good tip. Manual focus will always give you a much sharper image than using automatic focus. We've got our image set up there now, so the first thing we need to do is put our graduated filter in and get an idea of the difference that the graduated filter makes. Basically what the graduated filter will do is it will darken the sky and make the sky approximately, I'm using a 4-stop graduated filter, so it will bring the exposure of the sky down to more evenly match it to the exposure of the foreground so that we don't get any blowouts in the sky when we shoot the image. This is my graduated filter. This is the 100 by 150mm Nisi 4-stop 1.2 grad filter. If you have a look at that filter and hold it up to the sky, you will notice that it's graduated. It's darker at the top and it slowly graduates as it moves towards the bottom of the filter. The best way to put the filter into the filter holder, some people often get confused which way it needs to go. The easiest way to remember which way your filters go into the filter holder is when you're looking at the camera front on, you need to be able to read the writing on the filter. It needs to be simple to read and upright. That's the easiest way to know which is the correct way to slide your filter in. We're going to slide our filter in, the grad filter, the second slot away from the camera. So the first slot closest to the camera will be the slot that we use for the 10-stop ND filter. Whenever you're using ND filters, they have a rubber gasket on the filter, and that needs to be closest to the camera so that it seals out light, so that you don't get any light pollution or light leakage. So in the second slot out, we will begin to slide our graduated filter in. Always put it in just a little bit to start with, make sure it's not going to fall out. And then I will use the viewfinder or the live view on the back of the camera to determine how far I need to push that graduated filter down to get the sky the way I want it. I bring up my live view and I use the wheel on the front of the camera which controls the shutter speed, and I turn that right down so the image or the frame looks quite dark, quite underexposed. That way I can clearly see the line where the filter merges into the image. I use 2 fingers and 2 thumbs, just like that, almost like you're holding a camera and clicking it. 2 thumbs on the bottom of the filter holder and 2 fingers on top of the filter. And I gradually slide the filter down and watch my live view screen to see the difference the graduated filter makes to the exposure in the sky. As I bring that down, I can see a real difference when I get to about there. That's far enough. A lot of people tend to push their graduated filters down way too far, and what that will actually do is take a lot of detail out of the items on your horizon, whether it's mountains, trees, whatever it may be. If you push your graduated filter down too far, it will blacken those areas. So where I've got that is generally fairly close depending on how much sky you have in your image, but that's far enough. We can see on our live view that we've brought that down far enough, and it's definitely made a difference to the exposure of the sky. Now that I'm happy with the position of the graduated filter, the next thing I do is wind my exposure back up. And I'm exposing, in this instance, using my histogram on the back of my live view screen. You don't have to do that, but that's what I like to do. You can also quite simply use the little exposure graph at the bottom of the screen. I'm watching the histogram and I'm winding my exposure up to where I think looks good in terms of exposure. I'm pretty happy with where that's at there, so I'm pretty happy that will be a good exposure. So the next thing I'm going to do now is adjust the circular polarizer to take that white gleamy glare off the water. Quite simply, I look at the live view screen on the back, I pick somewhere in the foreground where the water's a little bit white and a little bit highlighty, or a little bit white from the sun glow, sorry. And quite simply, I just spin the little wheels on the 82mm holder, which will turn the polarizer. I watch that one spot until I can noticeably see the glare come off the water. Now I'm happy with that. That's taken some glare out of the water. Also, one of the advantages of the circular polarizer is that it allows you to see into the water better. So if you've got some nice rocks in the foreground, in this case the water's very clear, the polarizer also enables us to see into the water better than it would without. So it's definitely a very valuable piece of gear to use. I don't use the polarizer all the time. Pretty much the times when I would use the circular polarizer is if I was shooting moving water, or water that has a lot of sun glare on it, or if I was shooting in the middle of the day and I had a lot of white glow or glare from the sun on my subjects. Otherwise, if it was an overcast day or very clean, even light, I probably wouldn't use a polarizer. So now we've got to the point where we've got our graduated filter in position, our polarizer's in position, we've got our composition set for the image, and we've also focused. The next thing we need to do is take a test shot to make sure we're happy with the exposure before we put the 10-stop filter in. So we'll click away here and take a test shot and just see what it looks like. So we've taken our test shot, we look at the back screen and we're quite happy with the exposure that we've got. Sometimes it pays to take 2 or 3 test shots by adjusting your exposure each time until you're quite happy with the exposure that you've got. We've got a test shot there, we're happy with the exposure on that image. So the next thing we need to do, we want to calculate the exposure time for our 10-stop filter and get it spot on. So we take a look at the shutter speed on our test shot. In this case, it's 1/4 of a second. We're shooting at f/22 here. So to determine the right shutter speed for your 10-stop filter, I use a smartphone app. The smartphone app does all the work for you. You really need to just open the app up on your smartphone, take a look at the exposure time in your test shot. This one is 1/4 of a second. The smartphone app will actually also give us options of 6-stop, 10-stop and 15 stops. We select 10-stop, we spin the little wheel on our smartphone app to 1/4 of a second, and it tells us that a 10-stop filter will be a 4-minute exposure. Really all we then need to do, put our 10-stop filter in the available filter slot closest to the camera, Make sure we get that in position nice and snug and it's got no light leakage. And then we will put our camera onto the B for bulb mode, and we will make sure that all our settings on bulb are the same as what they are on the manual settings. So we need to make sure our aperture and ISO is the same, and we'll then shoot a bulb image for 4 minutes. Here's my 10-stop Nisi filter. Same way to slide this in as we put the graduated filter in. It's got writing on the top of the filter. The correct way is when you look at the camera front on or lens on, you need to be able to read that writing upright. That is the correct way to slide the filter in. We bring that filter down and gently bring it in to that first slot closest to the camera. It's very important when using ND filters that this rubber gasket is hard up against the camera or the filter holder on the camera end, and it seals off so it doesn't let any light leak in. I use the same technique to slide this filter in as I did with the graduated filter. 2 thumbs, 2 fingers, and just gently slide the filter down. This one needs to go all the way down so that it's even, so that the rubber gasket is sealed off on all corners. Okay, that's now in position. The next thing we need to do is to put our camera onto bulb mode. Make sure our aperture is the same as what it was when we're on manual mode. I know our ISO is the same, and then we'll shoot a 4-minute exposure. I switch over to bulb mode. I adjust my aperture to make sure it was the same. I use my remote control, and I will now shoot an exposure for 4 minutes. Okay, so there's our exposure. 4 minutes have passed and exposure's popped up on the screen. If we have a really close look at that image, you'll certainly notice the difference the 10-stop filter's made. The water in the foreground is nice, silky and smooth, and there's even a little bit of movement in the clouds in the sky there. Take a look at those clouds, you can see that they've sort of moved along a bit, and we have a really nice, subtle, soft look to our image. That's the difference an ND filter makes. I love the 10-stop filter in particular. It works well in a lot of situations and I use it a lot. It's probably my most used filter in my kit. Okay guys, so that's about it. We're happy with our image. It's come up really well. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and that's about it in a nutshell. Basically what we've tried to do is give you a simple instructional video on how to set up and use the Nisi filters. If you'd like to know any more about my services, my photography workshops and tours, make sure you head to my website, brettwoodphotos.com, and have a look around. Also, if you'd like to purchase Nisi filters or any other premium quality photography products, check out photosharp.com.au for a good deal. Thanks guys, thanks for watching.